It's challenging to pinpoint the exact moment when a marriage starts to decline, particularly when it's been founded on unwavering trust for decades. The revelation from my wife hit me unexpectedly. She confessed her love for a man she had just met, shattering the foundation of our 23-year marriage. Her confession left me feeling devastated and shattered. Yet, it was her subsequent revelation that truly fooled me. Recalling that scene from The Godfather, when Michael Corleone is captivated by a woman in Italy, his Sicilian bodyguards noting his love-struck state, it's not merely a fictional portrayal. I witnessed something akin to it firsthand, though I failed to recognize it at the time. It wasn't me who evoked such intense feelings in my wife. It was another man. Reflecting on the past 23 years of our marriage, I realized it marked the beginning of the end for what I had believed to be a perfect life. I often find myself jumping ahead, contemplating the course my life was supposed to take but didn't. Allow me to properly introduce myself. I'm Noah Robinson, 49 years old, residing in a quaint Midwestern city about 3 hours away from Chicago. By profession, I'm an accountant working for a prominent national firm. While the work can sometimes be monotonous, the compensation makes it worthwhile. Typically, aside from the bustling periods in March and April, I maintain a standard 40-hour work week. Until about a year and a half ago, I was married. My former spouse, and I have a daughter named Elizabeth, who is now 23, married herself with a child and living in Denver. After 24 years of marriage, my ex and I became another statistic of divorce. Despite what I thought were 23 miraculous years, as I mentioned, my encounter with Louise dates back to my sophomore year at Iowa State University. Louise was also a sophomore, having transferred to my dormitory after her freshman year. I first noticed her slender, athletic figure basking in Iowa's intense August sunlight outside the dorm. As I entered with some friends, I couldn't help but jest. "Guys, I have to go. I'm about to introduce myself to the future Mrs. Robinson." Though said in jest, there was a hint of seriousness as my friends followed my gaze to Louise. "Wow," one of them remarked. I heard the words, but couldn't discern who had spoken. My attention was completely absorbed by the blonde beauty reclining on a towel in a bikini beside the dorm. Leaving my friends behind, I approached her. But as I got within about 4 feet, she propped herself up on one elbow and waved me off with her other hand. I felt crushed until she spoke up. "Hey, idiot, you're blocking my sun." Swiftly, I shifted about a foot to my right, allowing the sun to cascade back onto the enchanting woman beside me. Her megawatt smile illuminated me, and in that moment, I would have gladly acquiesced to any request. Much improved. "You do," she chuckled, seemingly unfazed by the presence of a stranger approaching her. I suppose when you possess her level of beauty, such encounters are commonplace. I expressed admiration for her beauty and proposed a date for the upcoming Friday night. "If I agree, will you kindly remove the drool from your chin?" She teased. "What? Oh yes, the drool." "Absolutely. It's gone," I stammered, feeling like a clumsy fool. "Well, it's quite evident. You're not one of those smooth talkers with rehearsed lines. So yes, let's go out." "On Friday night," she agreed, and I obtained her phone number that evening. We dined at a cozy Italian restaurant in Ames, while I sat there enraptured. She regaled me with tales of her life from the age of 3 until the present. It seemed only when the main course arrived that she paused her narrative. We just seemed to connect effortlessly, and within a month, we were spending almost all our free time together. She wasn't just intelligent, she held the title of her high school's valedictorian. Alongside her intellect, she possessed a mischievous sense of humor and a quiet self-assurance. As for myself, I considered my looks to be decent, nothing exceptional, but I maintained a reasonable level of athleticism, earning 7 varsity letters in high school. Intellectually, I ranked in the top 5 of my graduating class and was capable of engaging in thoughtful conversations on various topics. However, as Louise pointed out, I wasn't the type to have a smooth line for every occasion. Despite my confidence, I knew I was aiming beyond my league when I asked her out. But as they say, you don't get anything if you don't try, right? Our first physical contact occurred on our sixth date. Neither of us had much experience, but I had a limited number of previous partners. Yet, I possessed a secret weapon. I diligently read articles in various adult magazines, not solely fixating on images. Judging by the enthusiastic reviews I received from my partners, I must have developed quite a skill set, and the knowledge I gained from it proved valuable. Louise and I tied the knot shortly after graduating, effortlessly securing jobs. She found a position as a third-grade teacher, while I pursued a career in accounting, both providing stable incomes for our future together. A couple of years after purchasing our house, we welcomed our only child, a daughter. Life in our bed was satisfying, providing enough variety and frequency to keep both of us content. However, as time passed, like many couples, the demands of life and aging somewhat reduced our frequency of intimacy. Even after Elizabeth left for college, we maintained a passionate bond, still intimate 3 or 4 times a week. Occasionally, worries about Louise's fidelity crossed my mind, but these concerns were rare and fleeting. She might mention a new young teacher at her school being flirtatious, but she never showed any indication of reciprocating or pursuing anything further. I attributed these thoughts to my own insecurities. Admittedly, Louise is undeniably attractive, and I couldn't blame anyone for admiring her. However, admiration was where it should end. I made my stance clear to Louise early in our relationship. There's no room for sharing. She echoed the sentiment, assuring me that she felt the same way. While she didn't mind if I glanced at other women, any physical contact would be unacceptable. I respected her boundaries wholeheartedly. That was our understanding. Everything changed when we found ourselves at the annual summer party hosted by our neighbors, the Lewises, who lived 3 doors down in our fashionable neighborhood. Liam and Olivia always threw a grand bash the weekend following the 5th of July, and Louise and I made it a tradition to attend every year, along with most of our block's residents. The festivities were always a blast. Liam and Olivia were exceptional hosts, providing delicious food and drinks, and their property boasted a sizable in-ground pool and a sand volleyball court. Even the guests they invited from outside the neighborhood were usually enjoyable, with just one exception. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The party kicked off at noon, and Louise and I strolled over around 2:10. I headed to the bar, grabbing a white Zinfandel for Louise and a Michelob for myself, and we began mingling, initially sticking together before gradually branching out into separate conversations, both indoors and outdoors. This had never been an issue before. Periodically, I checked in with Louise to see if she needed a refill or a snack, or she would seek me out. Typically, we'd bid each other farewell with a quick peck on the lips. At one point, I was chatting with some male neighbors while Louise was across the yard, engaged in conversation with a group of women. A few outsiders arrived, including a man accompanied by 2 women, prompting Liam to greet them. That's when I noticed Louise's sudden change in demeanor as she observed the newcomers. Glancing at her, I saw that she had stopped conversing with her friends and was fixated on the newcomers with a look that seemed to blend astonishment and desire. At the time, I couldn't quite decipher her expression, but it was clear she was captivated. I must admit, after watching them for about 30 seconds, I felt a sense of unease settle in. Louise turned toward me, locking eyes and blushing deeply before returning to her friends. Ever had that strange sensation that something isn't quite right, but you can't quite pin it down? "Oh no, please," she exclaimed upon noticing my hold on the man's wrist. "No, meet Pascal Destenel. He teaches European literature at the college and joined last year. He's French, and he didn't overstep any boundaries, so I didn't object to his hand placement." The others in the group nodded in agreement, prompting me to release Pascal's wrist and offer a firm handshake, exerting some pressure to assert dominance. Louise then introduced me to the rest of the group. Almost as an afterthought, "I thought you might need a refill," I remarked as I handed Louise a glass of wine, fixing my gaze on Pascal. "You're so thoughtful, my dear husband," she replied, emphasizing Pascal the French way. Pascal struck me as a typical Eurotype. I must admit he was rather good-looking, around 32 years old, standing at about 6 feet tall, and weighing approximately 170 pounds. He sported a scruffy 3-day beard and had hair that seemed undecided between being long and needing a trim. His English carried a distinct French accent, leading me to speculate that he might be romantically involved with half of his students, regardless of gender. After the introductions, Pascal resumed discussing Victor Hugo or someone similar, and feeling satisfied that I had made my presence known, I wandered back outside to the yard. Eventually, Louise and Pascal joined us in the backyard for the start of the sand volleyball game. I was always heavily involved in these matches. As we played on the winner's court, my team saw plenty of action. A decent crowd usually gathered on the deck, observing from a safe distance where my wife had settled with Pascal by her side. I was too engrossed in the game to pay them much heed, but I did catch glimpses of them engaging in friendly gestures, such as touching arms and sharing smiles, and even witnessing an occasional blush from my wife. Every now and then, I'd wave over to her, and she'd wave back. My team secured multiple victories and continued to dominate the court for an hour. However, I realized that Louise and Pascal were no longer in their seats. Scanning the bar and grill area, I couldn't spot them either. Sensing something amiss, I convinced one of the other players to take my place, citing fatigue in my 48-year-old legs and a desperate need for a beer. As I departed, I endured good-natured teasing about my age, maintaining the charade. I headed to the bar for another Michelob, then wandered aimlessly around the yard before eventually entering the house. I searched through every accessible room and strained to listen at the closed doors, but found no trace of Louise or Pascal. Eventually, I approached the hostess, Olivia, and casually inquired if she had seen my wife recently. Sure, she and Pascal went outside to check something in his car, Olivia replied nonchalantly. Which car does he drive? I asked, a hint of irritation creeping into my tone. Realization dawned on Olivia, with over 14 years of friendship and neighborly tease. She adopted a concerned expression and responded, he drives a grey Jeep. I stepped outside and glanced in both directions down the street. There was no sign of the Saab. Just then, Olivia joined me in the driveway. I'm sure it's nothing, no, she said in a soothing tone. It probably just went over to the college for a moment. Yeah, thanks. Probably nothing, I replied, lacking conviction, and then walked away. The local college was only 7 minutes from our house. I decided to check it out myself. I drove to the school and combed through every parking lot. They had no Jeep. I tried calling Louise's cell, but it went straight to voicemail, indicating she was either busy or her phone was off. I left a message, followed by 4 more over the next hour. While I waited at home, I also reached out to her parents and her sister, asking if they had heard from her that day. They all said no. That's when a quote came to mind. Once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. I settled into my sofa in the family room, fixating on the empty, oversized screen for what felt like an eternity. There was no need to power up the television. The vivid images of my stunning wife being passionately involved with that Frenchman played relentlessly in my mind. Why did we bother rescuing that country in 2 world wars? We might as well have left it to the Germans. Sleep eluded me throughout the night as I remained glued to the chair, my gaze fixed on the silent TV. I half anticipated Louise's return in the dead of night. But as the hours passed without her arrival, I entertained the unsettling thought that Pascal might have been involved in a car accident with Louise as his passenger. By 7:00 a.m., unable to wait any longer, I dialed the local sheriff's office, identifying myself and inquiring about any accidents overnight. Disappointingly, they reported none. I made 4 more attempts to call Louise's phone, but each time I received no response. As noon approached, I heard a car pull up in the driveway, indicated by the sound of a single door slamming shut approximately 50 seconds later. Louise inserted her key into the lock, opened the door, and entered a few moments later. She noticed me in the family room and silently seated herself on the sofa across the room. Any lingering doubts I had about their activities were dispelled by her appearance. At least she had the decency to face me before returning home. Her long blonde hair, which had been loose yesterday, was now pulled back into a damp ponytail, and she wore no makeup. She was dressed in the same yellow sundress as the day before, and her chest, shoulders, and arms had a pinkish glow. She bore the satisfied expression of someone who had been thoroughly fulfilled, and I must admit, she looked stunning. There wasn't a trace of remorse or guilt on her face. If anything, she seemed to wear a smug smirk. "Nice of you to show up. Did you have a good time last night and this morning?" I sneered. "Actually, I did," she replied smugly. That wasn't the response I anticipated. "Listen, no," she continued calmly. "Have you ever experienced an incredible physical and emotional connection with someone from the moment you laid eyes on them? It's almost electrifying and miraculous and incredible." "Yes, I have," I responded promptly. "I married that woman." Her composed demeanor shattered, revealing a hint of recognition in her eyes, breaking through her calm facade. "I found mine yesterday," she said. "I can't explain it. I need him. I love him." "Just like that? Are you out of your mind?" I screamed. "You're willing to throw away 23 years of marriage over a feeling? Did I mean nothing to you?" I'm not sure why she didn't anticipate my outburst. She began sobbing uncontrollably when I exploded, but I remained indifferent. "I do love you, no," she finally managed to say through her tears. "Our time together has been miraculous, but the connection I have with him is just incredible. I love you, but I'm in love with him. It's incredible." "I understand. Give me some time to adjust, and I'll throw you a celebration," I snapped at her. "So, should we start the divorce process? Or do you want to?" I asked. "We'll split everything evenly, including selling the house." "I don't think we need to rush into divorce just yet," she replied, her voice tinged with exasperation. "Let's see how things unfold. We can make major decisions later." Now, it was my turn to feel exasperated. "What?" I protested. "That's not how it works. You don't get to keep me as a backup plan. If you're with him, then go to him as soon as possible. As far as I'm concerned, we were finished when you slept with him yesterday. Repeating it only strengthens my decision." But, she stuttered. "Fine. I'll file for divorce and move out by the end of the week." True to my word, I moved my belongings out of the house by the end of the week. I took a couple of personal days off work to sort it out. While I was loading my pickup one evening, Liam and Olivia Lewis approached me and apologized for inviting Pascal to their party. I stopped them, politely reminding them that they couldn't have predicted Louise's actions. Still, they felt somewhat responsible. I contacted my attorney and prepared the divorce papers, and Louise was served within a month. It seems she assumed I would procrastinate, as my lawyer informed me that the process server mentioned she reacted strongly when he handed her the papers. This might explain why she appeared at my new apartment just 3 days later, and forcefully entered when I answered the doorbell. "How could you initiate this if you truly love me as you claim?" she exclaimed as she entered my apartment. Initially shocked, I quickly regained composure as anger surged within me. "Are you sincerely oblivious?" I retorted angrily. "You're involved with another man. What did you anticipate my response to be?" "I might love you, but I won't willingly accept being made a cuckold. And if this doesn't work out, what am I supposed to do then? Just grant me some time. I'll return to you and be the perfect wife. We can grow old together," she pleaded. "You're living in a fantasy," I countered sharply. "I'm not granting you permission to pursue your ideal partner while you decide if it suits you. Furthermore, if he's truly your ideal partner, why would it not work out? Pascal is currently going through a divorce with his wife, and they're dealing with some financial matters." She continued to stammer before I eventually demanded that she leave my apartment or I would forcibly remove her. Louise and her lawyer attempted to delay the proceedings as much as possible. Meanwhile, Mr. Miracle moved into my former house and assumed my position. 4 months later, as I exited Charles Michel's with a colleague following a business dinner, I spotted a familiar duo making their way to the door. Pascal and a visibly pregnant Louise. She appeared to be approximately 3 months pregnant. I halted in surprise, blocking their entry. "Oh my God," I whispered. My companion paused beside me, clearly bewildered as the four of us stood face to face. Aiden, I'd like you to meet my wife, at least for a few more months, and her lover Pascal Deschanel, I said. Aiden found himself in the awkward position of needing to maintain politeness in a highly uncomfortable scenario. I thought he handled it admirably. Aiden stammered. She's pregnant. Is that yours? That's definitely his, I responded cheerfully. You're on no. You know, Louise remarked casually as she and Pascal passed by us and entered the restaurant. Later, Olivia Lewis informed me that Louise was indeed 3 months pregnant. Evidently, Louise had decided to stop using birth control because she thought highly of Pascal and wanted to have his child. Good luck with that, I remarked to Olivia. The divorce was finalized several months later. And 2 months after that, Louise gave birth to a son naturally. They named him Pascal Jr., perhaps as a testament to Pascal's perceived greatness. Our daughter Elizabeth wasn't thrilled about Louise's decision to have another child, especially given the circumstances of our separation and the fact that I wasn't the father. I was proud of Elizabeth for supporting me in this situation. Although I knew Louise had the baby, I hadn't spoken to her or seen her since our encounter at the restaurant months prior. It was inevitable that our paths would cross again, given that we both lived in the same town. But I was taken aback the first time I saw her after the birth. The weight gain didn't suit her, and it seemed like the experience had taken a toll on her 47-year-old body. I almost didn't recognize the somewhat grandmotherly figure pushing a stroller with a toddler in it at the local mall. Come on, no. There's no need to be so rude, a familiar voice called out as I hurried past them. One Saturday afternoon, I abruptly halted my steps, unable to resist the urge, and took a slow, almost cinematic second look at the woman and the baby before me. Oh no, it was Louise and her son. Hey there. Long time, I managed to say, trying to compose myself. Hey to you too, she replied. The baby, predictably, was adorable. He inherited Louise's hair and eye color, but had his father's slightly darker complexion. Wow, he's absolutely gorgeous, I remarked sincerely. Louise blushed lightly and thanked me for the compliment. It's been a while since we've crossed paths. And well, seeing you with a stroller, I apologized for not recognizing her immediately though. She visibly flinched at my apology, but graciously brushed it off without comment. While I had found her incredibly attractive after Elizabeth's birth many years ago, she was now more than 2 decades older. And since this baby wasn't mine, I suppose my hormones were firmly under control. We exchanged friendly conversation for a few more minutes, mostly about her struggles with sleep deprivation. I sensed a hint of genuine sadness, a sentiment she never exhibited after Elizabeth's birth. Eventually, I made my excuses and left to resume my shopping for the items I had originally set out to buy. The next encounter with Louise occurred at the Lewis's summer gathering, about half a year later. Liam and Olivia had always felt remorseful that Louise had met Pascal at their party, but I reassured them then, and truly meant it, that I didn't hold them responsible for Louise's regrettable choice. Nevertheless, Olivia persisted in trying to set me up with her single and divorced acquaintances. I must admit, some of those introductions were quite promising. Despite skipping the last 2 summer parties, they continued to extend invitations. This time, I decided to attend, even though they cautioned me that Louise and Pascal would also be present. I assured them that if any issues arose, I wouldn't be the instigator, and I intended to stick to that promise. I had been at the party for a couple of hours when I spotted Louise and Pascal entering the backyard. Since their baby wasn't with them, I assumed they had left the child with a babysitter. Louise had shed some of her pregnancy weight and didn't appear as matronly as the last time I had seen her. But there was an unmistakable sadness in her once lively blue eyes. Even when she smiled, there was a vacancy in her gaze that I couldn't shake. I addressed the elephant in the room early on by approaching Louise and Pascal, offering her a brief hug and shaking his hand. I sensed a slight surprise from both of them, and I could see Olivia holding her breath as I approached. We exchanged small talk for about a minute before excusing myself and returning to my friends by the grill. As the Sun volleyball game began, I joined one of the teams during the second game. While I was on the sand, I noticed Louise sitting in a chair, watching and cheering. Mr. Miracle was nowhere in sight. After playing 2 games with a loss in the second, we had to leave the court and wait for our next turn. While getting a beer, I glanced over at Louise sitting alone. Old habits die hard. I thought to myself, grabbing my drink and heading indoors. Upon checking the third room, the den, my suspicions were confirmed. Pascal had his arm around Grace Baker's waist as he conversed with a small group, while Grace gazed at him with desire. Grace, a former neighbor from down the street, was unmistakably married. I should have kept it to myself. I thought, if this is what I suspect, then he plans to be intimate with this woman tonight by betraying Louise. If I don't say anything, it will be my fault. If I speak out, it will cause chaos, and I will still be wrong. A real friend would have informed her, but I wasn't a real friend. I was her ex-husband. Why should it be my duty? And then fate intervened. Grace's husband, Jacob, who happened to be on my son volleyball team, apparently followed me inside to discuss strategy. When he noticed the same scene as me, Pascal hugging Jacob's wife, and she looking at Pascal like he's irresistible. You are a despicable person. Get your hands off my wife, you idiot. He shouted at Pascal as he rushed towards them. I initially moved to intervene in the impending altercation, but then reason prevailed, and I allowed my volleyball teammate to pass me before Pascal could break away from his wife. Jacob seized Pascal's arm forcefully, twisting it. There was a distinct crack followed by Pascal's agonized cry. The commotion drew even more onlookers into the room. Fortunately, one of Olivia's friends, an emergency room nurse, quickly assessed Pascal's injury and called an ambulance. They'd arrived along with 2 accompanying police officers. After about 15 minutes, the police officers took statements from everyone present in case Pascal decided to press charges against Jacob Baker. The older officer, Colin Nelson, looked to be about my age, while the younger one, Caroline Carter, was in her early 40s and had pronounced Irish facial features. I did not fail to give Officer Carter a statement. Amidst the chaos, Louise was in tears, holding onto Pascal's uninjured arm and trying to comfort him. While emergency room doctors treated him, it was obvious that she was unaware of the events leading up to the altercation. Once Pascal's condition stabilized, the emergency doctors took him to the hospital, leaving Louise behind. She looked at me for guidance, and I nodded, directing her to Officer Carter. Before signaling 5 with my fingers, Carter noticed Louise waiting for me, so she proceeded to interrogate me. I recounted my version of events, mentioning that Pascal had taken my wife from me at a party 3 years ago. Her reaction to this revelation was one of surprise. "Yet, you're still planning to accompany her to the hospital," she queried. "Are you simply exceedingly kind or utterly foolish?" I hadn't anticipated that question. Looking up at her, I noticed she was trying to suppress a smile. "Utterly foolish," I replied. "Can't you move on now?" she whined. "It's been 3 years." "It's not about moving on, Trace," I replied. "Pascal shouldn't have laid hands on Grace Baker. And Jacob was justified in his actions. Maybe, if I had shown such boldness, you and I would still be together." The words slipped out unexpectedly, bringing tears to Louise's eyes as she turned away. In the pickup, I left Louise at the emergency room and didn't accompany her inside. After our divorce, she and Pascal had to share a small home with the proceeds we split from selling our house, with her occupied for the evening. I reached for the card officer Caroline Carter had given me earlier from my shirt pocket. Quite a charming woman, I mused to myself. I decided to play it cool, so I waited 3 days before reaching out to Officer Caroline Carter. She picked up on the second ring. "Could you have waited any longer? I might have been engaged and married by now," she teased me over the phone. "Perhaps you're right, but rushing things won't make you the next and last Mrs. Noel Robinson," I retorted. "Now who's being cheeky?" she shot back. "How do you know? I'll even say yes when you ask me out." "I know, I'm not interested in going to any Irish pub for a date." Her mention of an Irish pub caught me off guard, because truthfully, that's exactly where I had planned to take her. It just seemed fitting. Taking an Irish girl to an Irish pub, she noticed my hesitation and correctly guessed my intention. "What's with you guys? Can't any of you be more creative just because I have flaming red hair? You all assume Irish pub." I hesitated briefly before resorting to my backup plan. We had an excellent Greek restaurant in the city that I adored, and Greek cuisine was a departure from Irish fare. After a moment's thought, she responded positively. "Thanks for being spontaneous," she said. "When I pass on the Irish pub, most guys default to Asian, but are not a fan of food that resembles a haven for cockroaches." I burst into laughter at her remark, sensing a connection that could last a lifetime. We conversed for another hour, covering a range of topics. I learned that she was actually 44 years old, divorced for 9 years due to her ex's infidelity. She had a son attending Michigan State University as a sophomore, studying pre-law. Saturday night's dinner was exceptional, accompanied by Miracle Company. I picked her up from her residence on the south side of town and was stunned by how stunning she looked in her little black dress and heels. She had curves in all the right places, a lovely face, and vibrant red hair. She epitomized the term beautiful. We had one of those meandering conversations that seemed to touch on everything and yet nothing at all. Her voice was so captivating, I could have listened to it all night. She didn't seem to be in a rush to settle down with her husband, much like I wasn't eager to hurry into finding a wife. This attitude made her both relaxed and intriguingly unpredictable, especially with her naturally curious nature, almost like that of a detective. She posed some probing questions, showing that she was not only listening, but also engaging deeply with what I was saying. After dinner, I drove her home. I didn't suggest going back to my place, and when we reached hers, she didn't extend an invitation either. We exchanged good nights at her doorstep. But then she surprised me by leaning in quickly and planting a soft kiss on my cheek. I must have turned 3 shades of red. I bid her good night and practically floated back to my car. I can't even recall the drive home. It felt like I was 18 all over again. Her lips felt so gentle on my cheek, and I'm almost certain she was wearing White Shoulders perfume. She called me Sunday morning, inviting me over for bagels and lox at her place. How could I refuse such an invitation? A few days later, Olivia and Liam extended an invitation for dinner, partly to offer apologies for recent events, and partly to hear my side of the story. Pascal had been threatening legal action against them, which caused quite a stir. "Does this guy think he's the ultimate catch?" Liam exclaimed, clearly irritated. Olivia, however, made a comment about Pascal's charm, earning herself a sharp look from Liam. According to the Lewises, Jacob spent the remainder of the weekend behind bars before being bailed out on Monday morning. Upon returning home, Grace and their children were nowhere to be found. They had sought refuge with her mother in a neighboring town, suggesting that their 12-year marriage was likely at its end. "Tell Jacob to reach out to me," I offered, and assure him that I empathize with his situation. "I'm here if he needs a confidant, and I'll support him when this matter goes to court." Liam agreed to pass on the message, acknowledging the support. "As it stands," Liam continued, "we've decided that this will be the last of our summer gatherings. The stress is too much to bear." As Liam spoke, Olivia seemed preoccupied with her plate of peas, indicating that things hadn't been the same in Lewis Land since the party. A few months later, the news of Olivia's pregnancy became evident as her baby bump began to show in public. I didn't need to speculate on the identity of the father, because Liam himself called me to disclose the news. "Can you believe this mess?" He practically yelled over the phone. "That jerk got my wife pregnant. She's been having an affair with him since last year's party." Liam revealed that he had remained oblivious until Olivia started experiencing morning sickness every other day, which mirrored the pattern she had during her previous pregnancies. When Liam confronted her, Olivia confessed to the affair with Pascal for over a year, though she insisted they mostly used protection. However, during a weekend getaway to a motel, they decided to forego it a few times. After this revelation, Liam jokingly asked for a referral to my attorney, joking about a friends and family discount. According to Liam, Pascal and Olivia had relocated to an apartment near the campus, leaving Louise and her son to manage on their own. "It's not my issue," I retorted. Little did I anticipate the complexities of the female psyche as I pondered over lunch at a nearby McDonald's. Approaching my table with her son in tow, their hands intertwined, Louise placed her lunch tray on the table across from me. The child eagerly took the seat beside me. "Hi, Louise. Hi, kiddo," I greeted them. The toddler, now around 3 years old, extended a clean hand for a handshake. Impressed by his attempt at maturity, I accepted his hand and shook it firmly. "Hello, sir," he said earnestly. "Hello, Noah," Louise chimed in. "It's growing so fast," I remarked to Louise, glancing at her son. "You might have a future 6-footer on your hands." From her expression, it was evident that Louise acknowledged my attempt to be courteous. Yet there was an underlying unease apparent on her face, suggesting that if she didn't address it soon, she might reach a breaking point. "Come on, just ask," I gently urged her, observing her son unwrap a cheeseburger. "Did you truly love me as much as you claimed?" she began softly. "Because if you did, why didn't you fight for me, like Jacob did for Grace? Why didn't you ask me to return like someone who genuinely loved me? Why haven't you visited my house to check on me and my son? Maybe even invite us over?" I hadn't anticipated this. Was she implying it was my fault? I took a deep breath, trying to maintain composure and avoid an angry outburst. "Wow," I exhaled. "So it's all on me? Really? You're the innocent victim here." As I spoke, my voice gradually rose in volume. This wasn't my intention. I needed to convey my point. "Wow," I exclaimed, raising my hand. "Remember when I removed Pascal's hand from your waist, and you insisted there was nothing going on, asking me not to cause trouble? I trusted you completely and didn't pursue it further. Forgive me for putting so much faith in you. If I had known then what I know now, I wouldn't have trusted you. I would have reacted differently, like Jacob did. But you, the person I trusted the most, lied to me, so I didn't fight for you. Then when you returned home the next day at noon, what could I say? The damage was already done, repeatedly by the looks of it. So, what was there left to argue about? You had given yourself to another man and broken our vows. There was nothing left for me to fight for. You made it crystal clear. This was your decision alone, and I had no say in it. So, what remained to fight for? You were no longer mine, you belonged to him. But you never attempted to change my mind, she complained, or convince me to stay. Nothing. If you truly loved me, I asked, how many times did you sleep with Pascal? That first night and morning? I'm sure it was more than once, I remarked. The first time could have been a mistake, but maybe I could have forgiven you. Choosing to do it again was a conscious decision. Anything beyond that was you breaking my heart and shattering it into pieces. And you had the audacity to claim you had a fantastic time, an extraordinary time if I recall correctly, and that you and he shared this almost supernatural connection. You didn't regret a single thing. You know, lust and loss share the same 4 letters. So what was I supposed to think? As the saying goes, if you love something, let it go. If it comes back, it was yours. If not, it never was. And then, just to add insult to injury, you had his child at 47. I couldn't persuade you to have a second child at 23 years. But not only do you readily welcome Mr. Miracle, but then you let him impregnate you. So, is this all about your wounded male ego? She retorted, perhaps a tad too sharply for my liking. My attention snapped to that remark. But with the child present at the table, I resisted taking the bait. No, what you chose to do once you were with him was your decision. It seems you loved him enough to want to have his child, even if you never desired another with me. Believe me, I received the message. We lapsed into silence for a few moments. She seemed hesitant. I sensed the direction this conversation was heading, but someone had to broach the topic. So, what's your plan now? I eventually inquired. You and Pascal never married, but he's acknowledged as the child's father. Correct. At the very least, you should pursue him for child support. I'm going to let Olivia handle him, Louise replied, but you're right. I should seek child support from that cheating jerk. That sounds like sound advice. Do you ever contemplate what could have been between us, she added. How things might have turned out? To be honest, no. I replied softly. You shattered my heart so completely that I never wanted to dwell on what might have been. I cherish some miraculous memories from our past life that I'll hold dear forever. But that's in the past and it's never returning. We resumed our meal. I observed the boy playing with his French fries, triggering memories of our daughter Elizabeth doing the same thing. He's a fine child. I'm relieved, I concluded. Despite the remarkable connection we initially shared, our relationship never quite reached the depth I had hoped for. While our physical intimacy began passionately, it didn't evolve alongside our emotional connection. Love never fully supplanted the lust, and once the excitement faded, she seemed to realize it. I witnessed that moment of clarity as tears welled in her eyes. She exchanged the warmth and security of genuine love for the fleeting allure of physical desire, akin to a lightning bolt that illuminates briefly before fading away. Nevertheless, my beloved partner and I marked our 7th wedding anniversary with a trip to an unexpected locale, Italy. While I initially proposed visiting her homeland, a playful response and yearning for novelty led us to opt for a destination with a sunnier climate and vibrant flavors. Our choice of destination aptly mirrored the warmth and exhilaration of our relationship. We continued to work for a few more years before retiring from the computer security firm we founded together. We reflect on our journey from career development to entrepreneurship, but our connection remains fresh and invigorating even though we spend most of our time together, both personally and professionally. Each day seems to deepen my love for her, especially now that we have 2 children of our own and 4 grandchildren to boast about. Although our family is scattered throughout Denver, California and Houston, we treasure the moments spent with our beloved grandchildren. From time to time, I meet Louise around town, but our interactions are usually brief. She seems to be busy with maternal duties toward her son, who is now about 10 years old, judging from news from my daughter. Louise is unmarried and rarely goes out on dates. It seems that her ex, Mr. Miracle, had to be persuaded to make steady child support payments. Despite all these hardships, her path seems somewhat bleak, devoid of many luxuries. However, we've realized that each of us walks our own path and must accept the consequences of our decisions. Friends, write in the comments how you like this story.